everyone, and welcome to day 3 of Astrho Live Partner Showcase. I'm Heidi Henriksen, one of the co-founders of the Astrho team, and I'm here today with Proper Insurance. Joining us is Darren Pettyjohn, the founder and CEO, I believe is the correct title. And with that, Darren's going to tell you a little bit about what Proper can offer you today. I'll turn it over to you right now.
Thanks, Heidi. Appreciate it. I briefly looked at the lineup of the summit, the partner summit, and I think we're kind of coming to the end. So hopefully we can have this as a light session, give some of the audience an opportunity to ask questions about insurance, because it's really confusing. Once you get into the industry, a lot of people reach out to their insurance agent, of course. State Farm, Allstate, Nationwide, USAA, Liberty Mutual, on, and they get different answers. So I'm just going to run through real quick on who Proper is and what we do. And then what I'd like is for you to write down some questions, because this is really an opportunity for you to go directly to the source, ask questions to the industry leader, sort of put me on the spot, if you will. I'm open to take any question that you can throw at us. So with that, I'm just going to share our screen here. Just bear with me one sec.
And we've got 2 options for our attendees to ask questions, either in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll be monitoring both, so feel free to chime in whenever those pop up.
Awesome. Thanks, Heidi. So, and yeah, a shout out to Astrho, because we were one of the first partners to sign on with them. And I think it's such a smart idea to really have a comprehensive resource for people who are getting into this industry. It's confusing. I mean, it's very fragmented. There's a lot of different aspects of it. So great organization, and we're so happy to be a sponsor and supporter of Astrho. So Proper Insurance, that's our fancy logo. So about Proper, I'm just going to run through this real quick. It's kind of a credibility thing. We started it in 2014. We've written over 50,000 insurance policies in that time, which I would argue we're probably the leader in the space because of that. We did earn an exclusive endorsement from Vrbo a few years ago, because for them, they were getting a lot of questions, and I'm sure a lot of the Astrho members use Vrbo as an OTA, as an advertising platform for their rental. And they would actually, and they still do, get a lot of calls from people saying, hey, I called my insurance agent, I own this home, and they're telling me I'm not covered for this, or I'm only covered for certain items, and who do you recommend? So obviously that was a huge boost in the arm for our company. And it's underwritten by Lloyd's of London. That's the insurance carrier behind it, which is basically the market that deals with a lot of this unique type of risk. So policy highlights. This is an important one for everyone to understand. The first one is really probably the biggest takeaway from this slide. It's a commercial homeowners policy. So part of the reason people get so confused about insurance in the vacation rental space is there's so many different players, right? You've got a lot of supplemental coverage on the market. In other words, it's not a homeowner's policy. It's designed to supplement the coverage you have and fill gaps. That is not what Proper does. Our insurance policy entirely replaces your homeowner's insurance. So quick example, you own a vacation rental condo in San Diego. You decide to turn it into a short-term rental. You have Allstate who insures your condo. You would actually buy Proper Insurance and cancel your Allstate condo policy. So it entirely replaces the current coverage that you have on the property, which is unique to a lot of the other companies out there. It's commercial package policy. That doesn't really mean all that much. It basically just says that we cover the building itself, contents, liability, and the income. So it's fully comprehensive. You've got all your ducks covered, if you will. Building and contents, that just says it's special cause of loss, all risk. So most people think of like fire or wind and hail damage, broken water pipes, broken windows, a tree falls on your house, on and on. Special cause of loss is the broadest coverage you can get for your building. So it's a nice piece of the policy. The liability is very unique to our policy. Because it is a commercial policy at its base, our liability is business liability. And that's an argument that people still have to this day. They say, look, my vacation rental is not a business. I don't need business liability. My homeowner's insurance is fine. And it's just not accurate. Once you start allowing people to stay at your property short term, you're collecting money, it does turn into a business. I mean, you can't deny the fact you're competing with Hilton, you're competing with Marriott. People are staying at your property versus their hotel. You're in that market, you're a business, you're operating. So you need business liability. That's what we offer, $1 million standard. Income is another component that's really nice. So in the event that you do have a covered cause of loss, hail damage is a great example. The Front Range in Colorado, you get the hailstorms, they come through, they damage your roof. You need to file an insurance claim. Well, while your roof is being replaced, you have contractors and workers there for, say, 2 weeks to replace your roof. You obviously are not going to rent out your home to vacation rental guests while there's construction going on at your property. So you would get income to replace that lost income while the property is being replaced. And then ordinance and law is one. Looks like Justin had just slipped in there. It's an important coverage, but for time purposes, I'm not going to get into ordinance and law. A couple special enhancements that make us unique in the industry. We do a lot of liability coverage enhancements. In other words, we don't exclude liquor. So we're starting to see this a lot where guests will leave a basket of wine for their guests, or there may be even to the point where there's a small mini bar. I mean, people are constantly pushing the limits of trying to attract guests. Obviously, pools, hot tubs, bicycles, small watercraft. If you're on a lake, you may have a canoe or a kayak, a paddle boat, these types of things. Unless you have commercial liability with specific enhancements, there's just simply no liability coverage for those amenities. So that's a huge selling point of our product, part of the reason we're the leader in the space. Property coverage enhancement for theft and damage caused by a guest. This is a huge one. There's actually no other product on the market right now, homeowners product, that provides no limit on damage caused by a guest other than proper insurance. So that's a really important one. It doesn't happen that often, and so people really don't think about it, right? Most guests are screened to a certain level. You've never had a big party at your vacation rental. It's just something you're not worried about, but it does happen. And so it's a nice coverage to have. A couple others, we removed the vacancy clause, which creates some gray area in other policies, because what we're seeing now is multi-use of the property. So when we came into COVID, we had a lot of insureds who kind of transitioned to this midterm rental model where people would rent the property for 30 days or 60 or 3 months at a time. And when that happens, you've now kind of gone from a business to a landlord environment, right? Someone's staying at the property for 3 months. It's not necessarily a business transaction. So we remove all these exclusions, so the coverage is always in place regardless of the use of the property. Super important, and that's one we do. We do bed bug protection, which is kind of cool. There's actually a few others that do that now. They followed our trend, which is great. I love being a trendsetter. But we were the first to offer bed bug income and property protection, extermination protection as a result of bed bugs. So one quick claim example here. Looks like Justin threw this in there, so kind of hard looking at these pictures, but if I remember correctly, this was a property up in Washington, and I think they actually threw like a rave. If I'm kind of old, maybe that's dating myself, a rave. Maybe it's called something else now, but basically a party. They put out some flyers and everybody showed up at the vacation rental, had a big party. So as you can see from this actual claim numbers here, 100,000 is what the claim cost Lloyd's. We paid the insured 100,000. Pretty big deal. The reason we bring it up is this is exactly what we're talking about with entrusting your property to someone else and there being no coverage. So I'm going to give you a quick example. Let's say you own a coffee shop and you're going to go out of town for a week and you give your coffee shop keys to your brother. You say, hey, bro, watch my coffee shop while I'm out of town for a week. You've now given the keys to your brother. You've entrusted your property to him. You come back a week later, you go into your coffee shop, and all your commercial coffee equipment is stolen. Barista machines, cups, dishes, linens, it's all gone. Let's say $50,000 worth of equipment. That's theft. You call your insurance company and you file a claim for theft. You say, all my stuff is gone. And they ask for pictures and they send out a adjuster and they say, what happened? Did someone break in the front door? Did someone, pick the lock? What happened? And you go, no, actually, I gave the keys to my brother and he ultimately ended up stealing all my property. Well, there's no coverage for that in business insurance because you entrusted your property to someone and that person basically screwed you over, okay? So vacation rentals are actually no different. What's happening when someone comes to stay at your property for a week, you are entrusting your property to them. You are giving them the keys to your vacation rental and you're saying, please take care of my rental. You give me $1,000, it's yours for the week. You've now entrusted your property over to them. So unless this client would have had proper insurance, most likely this claim would have been denied. Here's another one that's big, liability, right? So for the greenies in the audience, I'm not here to scare you and to tell you not to get involved in the vacation rental business, but I am here to deliver some sobering stats and help educate you. Once you cross over the line into a short-term vacation rental, you've now entered into the world of hospitality law, right? So we always think of the slippery when wet sign in the hotel, right? You walk into the hotel, there's a wet floor and there's a slippery when wet sign. Well, the reasons that that is there is that hotel has a duty to provide a safe premises for you to stay at. And that's an open and obvious hazard that they need to identify and show you, right? So this is a client of ours. We missed the pictures, but they didn't have a guardrail going down, or excuse me, a handrail going down their steps. It is what it is. We didn't have the picture. We didn't underwrite for it. We didn't tell them to put up a handrail, but a person fell down, got seriously injured. And the claim ultimately ended up settling for, let's see here, loss, looks like $375,000. So that's a big claim. And the guest has a very strong argument in the court of law saying, look, I booked this vacation rental. I assumed that this property was up to code and was a safe premises. And when I started walking down these stairs and I lost my balance, I didn't have a handrail. I fell, I got seriously injured. That's a big deal. So the point of this slide is for you to verify your insurance, find a really good agent, ask the tough questions, and understand that you're transitioning over into the world of business. In a simple homeowner's insurance policy, it's just not going to cut it. So with that, I'm not sure how long I've been going, Heidi, but I really want to open it up because when I kind of go through these examples, that's when the mind starts going and people usually come up with good questions. If we're lacking on questions, I'm more than happy to kind of just talk about some of our most common questions that come into our company. Either way is fine with me. But that's the short on proper insurance.
Sure. No, that was a great intro, Darren. And I even learned a few tidbits that I hadn't picked up on before. So thank you. We did have Cliff in our attendee list chime in, and he is currently using proper insurance, which is fantastic. And he's asking if my booking company, such as Airbnb, provides loss and liability insurance, does that reduce his need for separate policy coverage? So does he need to ask them for like a declaration sheet, or what would be the best next step for him?
Right. And I guess I'm guessing what Cliff is referring to is the Airbnb host protection, which is the $1 million liability policy they put on all the bookings via Airbnb, and then the host guarantee, which is the property coverage on every booking. And the short answer is you don't need to do anything, Cliff. There could be a situation where you're double insured, right? Insurance is always designed to not overlap. Flood doesn't overlap with earthquake, earthquake doesn't overlap with hurricane, and so on. But in a situation like this, like for example, the slip and fall down the stairs, we would reach out to Airbnb to try and have them co-defend on the policy. So at the end of the day, instead of us paying $200, we would split it. Wouldn't that be nice? We pay 200 and Airbnb pays 200. I will tell you, we communicate with them a lot on liability claims. A couple issues. Number one, there's a lot of exclusions in the host protection policy. So one, if you actually go online and look at the policy, you'll see one of the exclusions is personal and advertising injury. So there's no coverage for personal and advertising injury. Why would you need that coverage? If somebody ultimately ended up suing you for invasion of privacy. We've actually ran into a few of those over the years where a neighbor gets upset, a neighborhood, an HOA, whatever, and they sue you ultimately for invasion of privacy because you're running this business in this quiet neighborhood and you're disrupting everything. You would have no coverage with Airbnb. There's an assault exclusion. So I'm not saying it's not there as sort of a backup, but to rely on it as first defense is not a smart idea.
So in this scenario, it doesn't hurt to be a little bit over covered, it sounds like.
Well, you're right. And here's the bigger issue with the supplemental coverage. Once you transition and start advertising your property on Airbnb and Vrbo, you've violated your homeowner's insurance contract. So if any agent or any website or any person ever tells you, don't tell your insurance agent what you're doing, they are complete morons. Because once you've gone into business, you fundamentally changed the exposure at your property, and you're actually required in your homeowner's insurance to notify them of this change in exposure. Okay. We have a lot of really simple claims examples and lawsuits that are out in the market. The one we use the most is a lawsuit in California where a tree fell on someone's house and it was a $100,000 claim. They were insured. They called their homeowner's insurance carrier. They found out that they were running an Airbnb. They denied the claim. Even though that tree had nothing to do with an Airbnb booking, they fundamentally changed the exposure and they're not collecting enough premium, which in reality is fair. If you live at a home, you're there to shut off the water. You're there to shovel the driveway. You are responsible. There's a lot less risk than running a business. So if Travelers Insurance is charging you $1,000 a year for premium, year over year over year, and then all of a sudden you just decide to open up a business and you call Travelers and go, hey, pay my claim. They go, no, what you should have done is called us 5 years ago and we would have gone from $1,000 a year of premium to $2,000. We need to collect more money because we need to pay out more in claims. So I hate the supplemental coverage. I think it's a flawed business model because fundamentally the listeners on here, a lot of you are property owners. You own the property, okay? Well, it's your responsibility to insure the property. So call your agent, tell them what you're doing, send them a link to your Airbnb or Vrbo listing and get the right coverage.
So does it vary at all if you're only renting a room within your house as opposed to the entire property?
Great question. Yes, it does. And it all comes down to the use of the property. So the Airbnb phenomenon, and unfortunately the insurance industry got it right and wrong. So what happened is if you go to Google now and you type in Allstate Host Advantage, they have a home sharing policy. If you type in Liberty Mutual, they have a home sharing policy, right? And everybody goes, oh, that's the end of proper, you know, God, nice run, guys. But the big domestic carriers are now in this market and you guys aren't so niche anymore. Well, no, because what they've done is they've put on a rider to a primary residence, which is a huge deal, okay? So if you live in a home and it's your primary residence, AKA your resident premises, where you get mail, where you live, and you decide to advertise a bedroom on Airbnb, you can absolutely go to Allstate and buy a rider for limited coverage for that activity, okay? If you buy a second home where you don't live, it's an investment property, a vacation rental, whatever, That is now no longer your resident premises. It's not your primary home. So those home sharing endorsements that have come out over the last 3 to 5 years, they're NA. They don't exist. Or excuse me, they provide no coverage, because fundamentally you have the wrong insurance from the beginning. And I know it sounds crazy, but we see, and we have a lot of same lawsuits and examples of there's no coverage at all, period, because it wasn't your primary residence. So big deal when you call your agent and you're talking to them. This is not my primary home. I don't need homeowners insurance. It's not where I live. Big deal.
Yeah, well, you guys are obviously the experts, Darren, and as much as I'd love to sit and listen to you for hours about insurance because it's fascinating, we've got to move on our session. But we have done some amazing deep dives with Proper in some of our past partner education series. I know we'll be doing some coming forward. So this is some great snackable content for you to share with us today. We really appreciate your time. And please do reach out to Darren and his team if you guys have any needs or questions at all. So thanks again for presenting today. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much. Take care, Heidi.
Yep, you too.